In this video, I'm going to teach you how to turn your two-part animation into a two-part animation over a background, as well as creating other animated features within your imagery. To start with, you're going to need your two images that you've created to be designed the same and to work as an animated sequence. You could have 3 images or 4 or more, but I'm going to do mine with 2. My recommendation is if you have access to a copy machine, make a photocopy of your images. That way, in case you make a mistake when cutting or coloring, you still have your original images and you can try again. So the first thing you'll want to do is design a world that your animation is going to happen in. For me, I've created a park scene because I have a dog, and this makes sense. You might need to make something else. Oh. And I also have a copy of my animated dog that I will be, my cat would like to visit with us, that I will be cutting out in a moment in order to create my animated sequence. Keep in mind that you want your park scene or whatever background you're doing to be much larger than your animation so that you have a chance of animating several frames within the same image without having to create a new background. So I am going to stop my recording, color and cut out my dogs, and then go on to animate the next steps and sequence. Oh, I will also be creating some pieces of scenery that are separate from my background. So I'll be creating maybe a bush and a couple of rocks. We'll talk about what those are for in a few minutes. All right, so I have created my 2 animated dogs. I have cut them out carefully, and I've created some additional scenery. So for those that don't know, this is how cell animation typically works. Oftentimes this is done digitally now, but we, in the olden days, would draw the images and then go through a process of cutting them out and placing them on the scenery. So, for example, this is my dog animation, and so I would not see both of these pictures at the same time. I would see one and then the other. And so to animate this scene, I would start by putting the dog very far off the screen and zooming in very close. And I can either physically move the camera closer or go through a set of zoom techniques with my camera. And so deciding how I want to handle that will determine kind of how things are going to work. So I want to move kind of parts up and around and decide how they're going to be moving. Notice that there might be a slight shadow cast. Oftentimes this animation was often, instead of done on paper like we're doing, would be done on clear sheets so that you would not have shadows cast. But for us, shadows are fine. So what I would do is I would take a photograph here and then swap my dog out for the other dog and do that one. This time moving it slightly forward. And going through this process of sort of replace and place, replace and place, replace and place, moving slightly forward, we would watch the dog run across the screen. Where the camera would have to stay very, very steady, and the only thing that's changing is the dog movement. Now the camera could potentially follow my dog, and it could kind of be both things are moving, but that gets more tricky. The easiest way of creating our animation and making sure that it stays consistent is figuring out a rig in which to hold your camera a certain distance away from your background image. This could be done through simply placing it upright and then taping your background and your characters to the wall and putting a little piece of tape on your characters that then you would move your characters over. You could do it that way, or you could do it like I'm doing it, holding your camera steady as much as you can, or you could even design some kind of still rig to hold your camera. If you have a tripod, this would be a great time to use it to create your camera as a still animation. So that's the general principle with this. So you can have your character get covered up by other objects in your animation. Like I made another bush here. So as my dog runs by, the bush would be on top of where the dog is. So it would look like the dog is running behind the bush as it goes. So those are just some techniques that you can use in order to create your animation. So I will go away and I will make my animation, and you guys will see kind of how this all comes together to create a finished set of movements. For your animation, I would recommend using the Stop Motion Studio app and turning on the onion skin if you did not try that in your previous versions of animation, because it gives you the ability to check and see where your most recent image was. You can then just move your second image just slightly and get them lined up. Having something that's quite dark, that's easy to tell if it's lined up, like the nose, like I have on my dog here, was really helpful in my animation. So I was able to notice, hey, my onion skin nose was here, so I'm going to put my next nose just slightly ahead. And that created a very natural looking animation. Some other tips and tricks for creating an effective animation without needing to redesign the wheel is to utilize things like mirroring in your images. You can take your cutout animal or shape or character and you can mirror it by flipping it the other direction. So say you wanted your dog to run from left to right and then from right to left. You could do that. However, when you flip it over, it probably doesn't have all of the information it needs to make sense. You can color on both sides of a piece of paper, especially if it's a heavier piece of paper, and you can then be able to mirror so that your character could run. So from here, go do 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 do, and then turn around and go do 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 do, or then go behind the bush or something. So think about utilizing the back sides, especially of carefully cut out characters, because you have a perfect mirror. You could also create this using your Xerox or copy machine, if you have such a thing. When you are in the black and white stage, there's usually an option in the copy settings to create a mirror copy or mirror image instead of a direct image copy. You can also create characters that are larger or smaller by using those settings in a copier. If you do not have access to a copier, though, you can simply use this method where you would flip it upside down or inside out and draw the lines that you see or color in the areas that are supposed to be different colors. So it would be colored front and back. So that would be another way of kind of getting out of doing some of extra drawing and having more options available for your animated sequences.